How's everyone feeling about their project?
I'm sorry, say that again.
And how's everyone feeling about their projects?
I'm feeling
Still working
pretty.
on it.
Yeah, I would say the same. Um, I'm actually, I guess, a little confident about it, just because like I haven't got started on the JavaScript yet, but I got like a good majority of my HTML and CSS done, so that's good.
Yeah.
I run on some kind of problem for the environment setup. Is I just try to adding some NPM on it, and it's kind of really my whole project is kind of not sorting out anything.
What percentage would you say you have done so far?
I I done
Oh, the
50% of
HTML.
it.
Yeah.
No, actually, I'm not doing the HTML. I use the React. So
Oh, okay.
kind of weird right now.
I'll say for me, um, I'll say 80% on the HTML only. Like we just strictly talk about like HTML. I'm like 80% done. How you feel about it, Joe?
Ooh. Um, let's see here. Here's all of the I don't know if you can see that at all. No, you can't.
Yeah, I can
There we
see.
go. How about all the ones circled in purple were the ones that I decided were like the minimum viable product, which I think is 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 pages. Um, probably close to like more like 18 to 20. I've gotten 7 of those are pretty cut and paste with like very minor changes because they're just like displaying files. Um, so with that done, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've gotten a go like probably 13 done so far. Kind of was procrastinating a bit. But I did like 3,000 lines of code last night in like 90 minutes after class. I was zooming.
Yeah, I was working on mine a little bit too. I ain't gonna lie. I was like, hold on, let me work on mine a little bit before Max comes and speak up the devil.
I'm here. I'm here. Hope everyone is okay from the massive storms that have rolled through. I think Rome got hit pretty hard and actually had a tornado touchdown. So that crazy rain was not just a little bit of water, but hope you guys are all right. Know a lot of people are without power. So you have any circumstances that you're under, no big deal. Just shoot me a message and we will figure it out. But hopefully everyone is okay. With all of that said, we are going to kick off class tonight with our capstone check-in. And before we do that, does anyone have any questions? Okie doke. With that said, who would like to go first?
Unless I'm gonna go first. Sorry, Joe.
Oh, you
I'm
know
taking.
what? Sorry, before you do, I forgot. I think Jason is joining us tonight to talk about the open data portal. So I'm going to let him go, and then Terry, you will be first up.
Oh no, that's actually tomorrow. I was here to watch some of the capstone demos.
Oh, good. I was like, I thought that was tomorrow, but I saw you
Yeah.
popping in. So never mind. Terry, you are good to go.
Okay, let me share my screen. Sorry, Joe. I had to take your spotlight for a minute. Do you want to see like the web page or the code?
The web page, unless there is a part of the code that you are really dying to get feedback on, more of the web page and how your progress is going.
So this is what I got so far. I think I'm pretty finished with the home page. I got it to when you click on this, it takes you to the actual like mod the mod this GitHub, so you can download it. You can also click this or this to go to the fighters page. I'm only doing like one character, so it's 4 minutes is done. I managed to get a good amount of HTML in here done so far. Managed to get this up and going, even though I kind of wanted like spaces a little bit. I mean, I had a little trouble with that, but I'm gonna do it probably a little later on. This right here was it's like getting like the YouTube link to like show it wasn't like working at first, but now I got this to work too. And then this one right here, I might probably do like a little legend, because if you're reading this like right now, you probably don't know what these numbers stands for. So I'm probably most likely might put like a little legend right here,
Okay.
and so people would know like what do like 2 and 1 means. I put like a link next to it, so it takes you it'll showcase the actual combo of this move right here. I didn't touch this one yet because this one is mainly on like JavaScript. This is like nothing but pure JavaScript, so I didn't touch this one yet. And then the last one is literally just the about page. Like it takes you to my YouTube, GitHub. Even though I gotta make this somehow make it like my YouTube link. You see how it's kind of like the YouTube is like above the link, and the GitHub icon is, yeah, I kind of fixed that. And then this takes you to the actual Discord. Sorry.
Awesome. So front end is looking really, really good. You definitely have met all the requirements for this check-in. That was actually beat me to the next thing I was going to ask is the next thing that I would do before diving into the JavaScript is think through like what those comments are going to look like. So come up with a couple like dummy comments or placeholder contents. You don't have to make them work yet because that's going to require JavaScript and the database. But just think through kind of, hey, do I want to have a login page? Or do I want to let anyone just comment on this? And then if they do comment, how does that show up in the interface? Is that a separate page that they go to? Does it show their name? Does it show just the comment? Does their timestamp show up of when they made the comment? Kind of think through that a little bit. But from this capstone check-in perspective, really, really awesome job there.
I do have like one question though. When I try to like put like another link thing in here, it kind of like looks weird. I can show you, but like it's like lined up next to this, but I want this link to line up with this. I don't know how do I.
I can take a really quick look at that. If it's anything that's going to take more than a second, can you switch back to your code? I want to try and keep it rolling as quickly as possible. Because these are all inline elements, what I think you'll be able to get away with is, I'm sorry, H3s are block elements, and A tags by default are inline elements. So, sorry, I'm getting confused. H3 is block, which means it takes up the full width, compared to A tag, which are inline, which will continue to wrap after each other. So if we make these H3s to line up with these H3s, I believe that will fix the problem.
Yeah, there we go. Thanks, Matt.
Of course. Very good work. Yeah, just a little bit more work on the comments there, thinking through what the comments will look like when they show up. Just because that's like the one aspect of your project that pushes it over into the full stack nature of things. And then if you really wanted to shoot for like more full stack interaction, you could also think about like, what does it look like as an admin to be able to delete other people's comments if I didn't want other people to be able to post them. But totally good for this capstone check-in. Awesome work. Looks like there is a chain going in the chat if you would like to take your place in order. Once we get through that order, we will just kind of popcorn through whoever would like to go. Does not matter to me. But next up, we have Joe.
Alrighty, I've got quite a bit of pages, so I'll try and keep it quick. Zoom to get out of my way. There we go. All right. That link is the link to this deployed website. So if anybody wanted to follow along.
I am utterly shocked that myprojectdomain.com was actually available for purchase.
That's what Nate said. This is just a screen for if you forgot your password. I'm gonna change how this goes. The intention was to have like the admin have control over password resets, but for the sake of the capstone and the spirit of doing things on my own, I'll have it be done by the user to manipulate that. So after logging in, this is just a quick demonstration of kind of the layout of all these. I don't like the jitteriness of how it's popping up, which I think has to do with the rows. So if we click into here, it's going to take us to the case view for the child. You'll be able to go into all this to a separate screen. I don't have that done right now. All of these are just going to be file storage pages for now. They kind of look like this, where you have like a little file entry in here, and to be able to view the PDF itself, be able to add it from here. The CSS isn't perfect right now, but that's pretty much the layout. Going into, nope, not that. Let's see here. Go back here. Yes. This is all a mess because I haven't touched the CSS, but this is the layout for intaking the referral. It's just got all the different form fields in it. I got 2 more sections to go. It's basically all the information that's in here, which I did for another project, which is just a recreation of the state site, just in a better format, a little more readable. So I have this if I want to use it, but probably not. And then I don't think I have anything for inbox yet. No, that should be it for now. Inbox, I have the Figma pulled up if you want to see that.
No, I think it's fine. This is really I don't want to say a unique project, but there are so many things to accomplish there that I would say try and scope your way down into like, hey, what's the one feature that is I'm going to complete full stack first, and then all of the other additional screens on top of it will kind of be, I don't want to say if you have enough time, but it will just be more work on that. So I would say, focus on what does the screen look like to like create the new the new I don't want to say patient work in
Referral,
electronic medical records for too long, right? But the create the new record, and then what does it look like to view all of that information, and then what does the edit and delete screen look like, right? And then on top of that, I know you have several other sections there for like adding attachments, creating referrals, all of that kind of stuff. But I would say kind of focus in on just getting that initial create, read, update, delete screens done. That's what we call CRUD. Create, read, update, delete. And then once that's done, it should be much easier to say, all right, let me adjust the CSS and go for there. But for sake of this check-in, total full credit, right? Because we already see that coming together of, let me see everyone who's in the system, let me be able to click into them, let me be able to go into the subsections of their data and create things out from there. So I think it's really coming together. Keep up the good work, but also don't feel overwhelmed. Like, I have to get every field loaded first and then go back and style out all of those pages. Try and focus in on grouping it by the entire page and getting one page fully finished, and then it will be easier to move on to the rest of them.
Gotcha.
Perfect. Tiffany, you are up next.
Sure. Actually, I run on some problem of on my project. After I adding some npm package, this one is kind of missing for the local host. So I have no idea what's going on here right now. I basically only can show you like calling here because I try to adding new API for MIIs here to adding on my login page, but somehow it's kind of like the whole page is gone.
Let me
So
see if I can get you back up and running. Um, More familiar with Create React App, which is what we're going to dive into tonight. Is it just a problem maybe with the URL?
it's kind of
No.
everything's gone. It's kind of weird though. I have no idea
Um,
what's going on.
it may be a problem with your router, but let's see, can we, how have you been starting the project? Have you been doing npm start?
Uh, I use npm running device.
npm run
DEW.
dev.
Yeah. And then
Okay,
it's kind of,
so it does say it's online.
but somehow it's kind of not fun anymore.
Let's just take a look. Your app, that looks fine. Browser router path. I wonder if this
The homepage.
3. Let's just take, oh no, because the server should still be starting no matter what the route is.
Yeah, I have no idea what's going on right now. It's kind of everything's gone.
5713. That is so interesting. Let's just try this to see if it's any different. Um, all right, well, I'm gonna let you kind of talk through what you have done. I'm not sure why that isn't working.
Sure.
The good news is all of your code is here, so it's not like your work is lost.
Mhm.
But if you're stuck and can't figure out why it suddenly isn't working, schedule a one-on-one with me, or send me a zip of the code that you have, and I can try and help debug it and figure out why it's not working.
Sure. Thank you. Basically, I just calling from this home page in here. So that's my code in here, and then that's my CSS for backgrounding, and then for the all of the user profile. So I basically just calling those things in. And I only calling on also on the home page for this. Yeah, that's pretty. It's both basic coding here.
Awesome. Yeah,
And then the
I
code.
can see from just the code alone, it's starting to really take shape. So I'm excited to see, and I don't want anyone else panicking here. Tiffany is probably 2 or 3 weeks ahead of us curriculum wise, and is already using React, which is obviously what we'll be starting tonight. So this is just a step forward. And then I also like seeing you using MUI. MUI is the framework that we use at work. MUI is, I don't want to say the step after Bootstrap, but it is an alternative to Bootstrap that is material. It stands for Material User Interface, and Material is what Google pushes over Bootstrap. So this is like 3 steps above kind of what you needed for this check-in, which is totally fine. I know the bummer of not being able to demo something live and really have no idea what is causing that, because like if it were something wrong with your code, it would be throwing that error in the terminal when it was starting up. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but you definitely have enough for this check-in. So good work.
Thank you.
Like seeing where it's coming together. All right, who was next in the list?
I think it's me.
Go for it.
Mine is much simpler than the last couple.
That's okay.
Get this off my screen. Get it over here so I can see. So this is the first page. Eventually you'll be able to click on each of these items and it will either highlight or gray out. I haven't decided which one yet, to indicate that you have collected or donated this in your game. And then each room has the requirements for each room to complete the community center in the game. I'm probably going to condense all this into a drop-down menu when we get into adding the JavaScript. It was just too much for me at the time, so I just went with this instead. And then after I do that, I'm going to add more things from the game. So it's not just the community center, but it's more of a perfection tracker.
Awesome.
I'm also thinking of adding a to-do list, like an in-game to-do list that you'd be able to toggle on and off. But I haven't fiddled with that yet, so that's coming in the future.
So definitely on the right track here. Something you might want to think about is like, what is the what's the login and create account screen look like? And then also kind of thinking through exactly what you said, kind of mocking up what's it look like when they've collected that item, right? Is it as something as simple as the box just changes color, or do I want to have something like you said, like that to-do list? And then how does that to-do list show up? Is that a sidebar that kind of covers the screen? Is that an entirely separate page? Kind of think through that interactivity level of it a little bit more. And then the other thing I would throw out is maybe some kind of instruction as well, right? Because if I get on this page, even something as simple as click on items to mark as collected are helpful. Because if I get on this page right now, I'm like, great, there's the blacksmith's bundle. What does that mean, right? Compared to, oh, if I click on all 3 of these, I get like a green check mark, and you know, I know that those are completed and I'm done with it. As well as maybe some kind of overall status tracker, right? Of like up in the top right of the nav bar, it could tell me that I've collected 30 of 400 items in the entire game, and maybe have some kind of like percentage up there. Not sure if that's actually a thing that people shoot for, but just throwing ideas out.
It is. And I really like that idea, and I'm including it.
So we get the basics here, right? And those are all like little nitpicking items. But that step before you get to JavaScript of actually making it like save in there, you know, don't go overboard on trying to have every item in the game like
Yeah, that's
fully
why I
loaded
started
in yet.
I started with this to begin with, because I knew it would be a lot if I did anything more than this to start.
So awesome work, meeting all the requirements there. So really, really nice work. But let me know if you need help with any of the next interface features.
Thank you for your suggestions.
Of course. Who is next?
I believe that would be me. Are you looking at the right screen? Excellent.
Yep, you are good to go.
All right, so again, we're just doing a reminder app here. So here is our login page. Just very simple. So email, password, new user sign up. The links are not working just yet, but we will work on that.
It's okay.
All right, so that brings us to our new user registration form. So again, real simple, just the standard format. Enter email twice, enter and confirm a password. Make sure you sign up to the terms and conditions that you will never read. And we get to standard old new task entry. Actually, we'll go to here first. Your homepage, your to-do dashboard. So here's what's coming up for the day. You know, list of tasks, the opportunity to add a new task, our full nav bar. And then from there we get to our new task entry, which I believe was this one here. And again, so it's we get a lot of drop-down categories, so you get to choose all that stuff. Enter in a manual task name, some details, and then pick our frequency stuff. And sort of that's it for what I've got for right now. 4 pages. Do you think we're missing any pages yet?
No, I don't think you're missing any pages. Don't forget to add a add task button on this screen so that there's an actual submit or
right.
save.
Yeah.
Tiny little nitpick there. But I think that it really comes together of you know, the functionality, the user flow of all of that, I think is really clear. So can you go back to your dashboard or homepage? Okay, so the to-do, the filters, the search. I really think you've nailed everything here. The figuring out the frequency once we get into the database and it being able to calculate what tasks need to be done that day will be a challenge. But I think it's a really good challenge to take on to figure out how algorithms work and date math and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't want to scare you away from that. Just know that that is coming, probably not next capstone check-in, but the one after it. But this looks really, really good. You can play around with actually getting this functional next with JavaScript. You could go back to kind of the blog posts, right, of how did we save the post into local storage and how do we pull it out of there if you wanted to. You could also kind of pump the brakes on that a little bit and go, oh, well, we know database is kind of coming up next and we know React is coming up next. So maybe I coast, maybe I learn those skills and then figure out where to go from there. That's totally fine. But you really covered a lot for this capstone check-in. We see the interface. We understand how the basics are going to interact. And so I think that this is looking really, really good. I can't think of anything else until we get into React, until we get into the database. Really nice job.
All right, thank you.
Of course. All right. Who is next?
It's me. Hello. Sorry.
Hi, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
I turned my monitor vertical for this. Oh. So I'm gonna share my screen. I cannot just pick how I want my app to look. I keep redesigning and redesigning, but this is what I have today. Do you see the
Okay.
screen?
I do.
So, oh, but I wanted to start at my login page. So this is my login page. It's pretty simple. Like my app is really light right now. I want it to be light at the end, but I don't know. Like I do want to do like a light color in the background. So
Okay.
you log in, and this is your dashboard. Here up here, I have my recently logged plants. I've been changing the CSS a lot. I don't know why I know why my pictures are so long. It's because the size of the car, but I don't know how to fix it. But so this is your next scheduled maintenance area. And I've also redesigned this a bunch. And so it shows you like what's next. Monday needs misting. And I want to add like a space between there. Still trying to figure that out. And then you have like the last time and the last thing you did, just like an example. And then down here, I haven't figured out what exactly I want this part to do. I got a lot of decisions to make, but this is here. This is maybe supposed to be a place that links to another resource to let you know about plants, like specific house plants, like what you can do, like if something specific is going wrong with them that you can identify. Anyway, so you click view maintenance log, and my maintenance log I've been fighting for a long time. So like it looks like this now, but when I click one of these tabs, which I'm not gonna do right now, it looks how it's supposed to. But this is the new maintenance area, like what you do to add like the new care that you did to your plant. I want this picture to change when I click the different thing, but I haven't done
Okay.
that yet, but it's gonna look like that. And this is like the type of maintenance. That list might get longer and the day you did it, and just like some comments you can write, like for example, like your plant can grow little babies on the plant. So I would write that down if my plant is growing a baby, because that means it's like progressing. But anyway, so when I click this, I do want the card to look like this. I don't want this much space in between, but I want this to be below it. So I've
Okay.
been fighting with that. I just need to work on it. And then here's my new plant log, which is okay. I'm probably gonna change the way it looks, but this is where you log when you get a new plant. You put your name, the scientific name of the plant, if you know it. I am gonna add like some sort of predictive text. So like if maybe a person knows like the first letter or something, or like what type, they could like take a guess and
I will
stuff like
definitely
that.
help you with that feature because there's no way I'm spelling a Latin name right.
I know, that's true. And this is like where in your house this plant is. And this is where you upload a photo, which is clearly a text area, but this is where the photo part will go. And then the submit button that does nothing, doesn't do anything. And then I have a my account page, which I have not finished,
Okay.
but my logout button is there. And I'm gonna make that real when I'm done. So that's the thing. I still do got a lot of work to do just because I can't really decide how it looks like. I just did a remock-up last night and I'm like, I can't keep doing this. So I just need to make decisions and then my code will
So
come together.
I will say that it looks really clean as is, right? So give yourself some credit for that because, like, again, all of you guys have been knocking it out of the park in terms of like you screen share, you show us what you already have built, and already without saying a reminder, this is the app that I'm building that is helping me take care of houseplants. You don't need any of that. Why don't you need to give us that context? Because the interface is already so easy to use that you instantly understand it, right? And so that's exactly what we're shooting for in this capstone check-in. And I know a couple of you are going, oh my God, my capstone looks nothing like this. That's okay. Kind of the point of this capstone check-in is a little bit of a wake-up call, right? Of, do I need to be spending more time investing into building out these screens, or am I going at a pretty healthy pace for right around that halfway point in the program, right? And so far, everyone who has demoed has definitely hit that of, I'm at the halfway point in the program, but my interface is a lot more than halfway done. And so you're totally nailing it there, right? Yes, yeah, I have to do the account screen, or yeah, I don't like that this div isn't in the right spot, but that's okay because the guts and the foundation are there. Now it's just a matter of getting it that last 10% over the finish line, right? And the bad news is that you're going to hit a point where you go, oh, I have to go remake all of this in React. But that's okay because we will be going through 3 or 4 different projects where we practice taking existing HTML and moving it into our React code. So it's not like you guys have to start from scratch on that. We will get the process of moving existing code into React, getting a little practice with that. It isn't an absolute requirement that your capstone is done in React, but I'm getting a couple weeks ahead of myself. So awesome job. If you need any help with the code, feel free to send me a zip of your code and a question, or schedule a one-on-one, and we can do that little stuff like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about the redesign. Is it worth it? Or hey, why is this showing up over on the right-hand side? I need help with my div soup of getting that in the right spot. Totally fine to be there. But awesome work. Great job. Definitely met all the requirements. So keep up the good work.
Thank you. I was nervous.
Okay, I'm next.
Go for it.
I just want to say mine looks nothing like any of the ones that was shown. Toddler mom out here. Okay. All right. Oh, gotta share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, you're good.
All right. Oh, let's get Sesame Street out of here. Okay. So this is my login screen. I want to add like a background to it and maybe a border, but it's under construction. Oh, and I'm basically doing like a child care management website, I guess you could say. So it's not as intense as everyone else is, but
Well, don't kick yourself there, because I know a lot of people are trying to compare themselves at the capstone check-in, and that is not the point. Everyone's capstone is going to be a different level, right? And that is okay, because some of you guys have picked projects, whether or not you know it yet, that are going to be much more intense in terms of the full stack side of things, saving things in the database, integrating APIs, all of that. Some of you guys may not have a very back-end or database heavy project, but you may have something really beautiful on the front end and a lot of features and a lot of interactivity, right? And I don't want you guys to kind of compare yourselves to each other. That's not the point of the capstone, right? The capstone is literally the only assignment, the only requirement that we give you guys that doesn't have a grade. We say, as long as you hit these requirements, you are graduating. You're not getting an A, B, C, or D on this. It's not points. It's not a percentage. It's what do you put into your project to prove to yourselves that you are learning everything that we are teaching, right? And
Right.
that's the goal. So I don't want anyone to kind of compare themselves at this level, because I have seen projects that are what we think are super far ahead, and then the person gets to the JavaScript, the database, the API side of things, and they're like, whoa, I bit off way more than I can chew. I'm going to be lucky if I get one feature working in my capstone. Then there are other people who are really behind on their front end, but love the database, love the back end, and pull something off technically under the hood that really proves everything that they are learning, but their front end doesn't look great. That is okay, right? That happens in the world of full stack web development as well. I hate doing front end code. Whenever I do something on the front end, whatever it looks like is like just barely good enough. But I'm a really good back-end developer, right? And I can pull off much bigger, more challenging technical things, but my front-end design isn't as great. That's okay. That's part of the nature of web development, and something that you guys can think about. What kind of job title do I want here? At the end of this, after all of my practice with the capstone, you may decide, hey, the front end ends up making more sense for me. You may say, I want to focus in the back end. You may say, I don't want to do full stack web development. I want to get into the actual design of user interfaces, or I want to dive into project management because that seems like the next best thing. Doesn't matter. I just want to give that disclaimer. Sorry, I'm totally hijacking your demo, but I don't want you guys kind of kicking each other on that. With all of that said, I will hand it back over to you.
Okay. So this is like the main page where like updates would be posted. I want to move this over and do like a calendar for like upcoming events. I also have to make another interface. So this would be like the interface for like the teachers. So I have to do another interface for parents, which probably will look completely different. And this is like my inbox. I want to make it so that I could click this and then it goes bigger, like Facebook Messenger. And I think I want to do mine's like light, like Deandra said, but not like too crazy. Like I don't want a background. And then definitely under construction. This will be like where all the pictures that they uploaded, they're gonna come here, so then they'll be able to see like old pictures and things like that. And this is gonna be a drop-down menu, but I still have not did that yet. There we go.
Awesome. So you're on the right track for sure, right? Think through that user and interactivity, which you've already started to do with what does the teacher interface look like and how they can create a post. But kind of think through what the different user levels are, right? How does a parent see that? And then like, can a parent click on a post and add a comment to it, kind of Facebook style? Or do we want to make it so only teachers can create new posts, right? All kind of little details to work out there. You may end up wanting to duplicate your pages, right? And call one like one called gallery teacher and another called gallery parent. And that way you can control what the different users would see there. But you've definitely got the foundation laid there. Would like to see just a little bit more HTML before you dive into the JavaScript and making it interactive and saving in the database and all of that stuff. But very close to having everything that you need for this check-in. And because the check-in level was only half of your pages, I would say that you've met it. But just push a little bit more on that HTML, and I think you'll be in a good spot.
Thanks.
All right, I've lost the list. Who is next? Austin,
Yep, that's me.
go for it.
Second. So I'm a kind of person, I could spend all day trying to figure out all the CSS and the design stuff. So I was like, I just gotta get something that works. So this is the sort of like main like splash page when you first log in, or when you first enter the site. You have your basic login and sign up pages. Once you do that, oh, I have my controls in the way. I can't really get my. You'll be brought to this like character creation screen. Name your character, your wizard's level, and the intelligence score, which is like how they determine like the effectiveness of their spells.
Man, let me tell you, after my day at work, I was questioning some people's intelligence scores today.
And then after that, it'll bring you to the main page.
Not any of you. Sorry, I didn't mean that. I meant other stuff.
So this I had a little bit of trouble with. I'm still kind of working on it. The idea of it is this is like your main, like it shows your character's name, level. I'm trying to make these drop downs specifically. But
Okay.
you would click each one of these and it would give you a drop down of all the spells you know for that level. And then on the right side, when you click a spell, it'll show all the details of the spell.
Okay.
Like casting time, like what the spell actually does. And this took me a while to like sort of nail what I wanted, what I had like envisioned. And this is about all I have. I'm going to be creating just a page, like a repository for all, like every spell, if you want to like look ahead or just like kind of research. An account page where you can like delete your account or just check your account details, and a contact page.
Awesome.
I do not have those set up yet.
So starting to come together. like you said, you've already got the plan of, oh, I want to make the drop down working, or I want to make this section interactive. I would say you also want to do that spells page. You don't necessarily want to go, oh, there are 300 spells. Let me get all 300 spells built out, because it is going to change once we get the database, right? Once we have information saving in, once we can pull that in, that changes things a little bit. But don't let that stop you from going, all right, let me load 3 spells right now, and be able to switch through them. And that goes for this page as well, right? Of like, let me just do 2 spells in level 1 and be able to switch between those 2. And then once the database comes in, we start using loops and building all of that out. So you're on the right track, right? We can see kind of that basic functionality. If you would like help with the getting the drop down to work, I would push you and say, do you want a drop down or do you want a collapsible panel? Something to think about, and that Bootstrap has options for. And then also, depending on how many items are in that, do I want to be able to search or filter the list so I can just type in a couple letters of the name of the spell and have it kind of pop up, or I can scroll through and click on it and get the details there. But you are facing what so many people face, right? Of, oh, I understand what the point of this page is. Let me start building it. And then you start going, oh, wait, I forgot that there are different levels of those spells. And you go, oh, well, how do I sort them into categories? And then, oh, well, where do the details show up if I've got the list of all of that, right? And that's kind of the beauty of HTML, is it forces you to take a step back and go back to your mockups or your wireframes and go, I want to lay this out a little differently, right? And so that's a good note for everyone of, if you're hitting that point where you're starting to dive into your HTML and you're like, wait, I forgot about sections of this page, or how do I lay this out? Oftentimes going back to the whiteboard or the notebook and just drawing it out a little bit more can be faster than trying to figure it out in your code to realize, oh, I need to relay all of this out, now that I've kind of thought through the information that's showing on the screen. So that's a very normal thing to happen. I don't want you guys to panic when that does. But perfect progress for this check-in. You already know what your next steps are, so that is great. So push a little bit more on that HTML, and then you'll be ready for the database and JavaScript side of it very shortly.
Thank you.
Nice work. Are we through the list? We are through the list. So who else would like to go and hasn't yet?
I believe Safi's the only
I haven't
one.
gone. Yep.
Yep. And
So-
Hazad, but I don't know if he is back home yet. Buy him a couple more minutes. Go for it, Safi.
Sounds great. Let me just get my website up and running.
And for
Okay.
anyone who is not on the call but is watching on the YouTube video, please schedule a one-on-one with me so that we can check in on your capstone progress. I'll also be hunting you down in Slack if you don't schedule in the next day or two.
Alrighty, let's see it.
And while you're still getting set up, Austin, there was a question in the chat if you're planning on using an API or building out your own database. That's something definitely to consider for anyone's project. If an API is already existing, there is absolutely no problem in integrating that into your capstone. So there is a requirement to build your own API, but that can be used for one little part of your project. And then you can use an existing API to build out the rest. So I know someone used Dungeons and Dragons last cohort, and they used a lot of data that was in a third-party API and brought that in. So just something to consider for sure.
Yeah. So a precursor to my capstone, I am a huge traveler. I've been to many countries, and so like in thinking about a project that I could find myself invested in. I knew that it had to center traveling. And so this is my capstone structured as a website and structured as like essentially a resource for up and coming travelers looking to venture more into their cities, like before they actually embark on their trip. And so this is the main page. There's a few blurbs on like the utilization aspect and like essentially the mission statement and the goal, kind of phrasing it as like a somewhat of a marketing, but also like just as a general like point of reference for travelers, also giving statistics because everyone loves those. Yeah, but the actual features are showcased in this. I just picked randomized cities, and right now, upon clicking them, they don't go anywhere, but I'm just at this moment, I'm still trying to think about what exactly I want to direct them to, whether it be an outside resource, like a wiki page and or I don't know, a Yelp page of some sort. Not too familiar with that, but or not haven't exactly confirmed that utilization yet, but the key feature is here. And essentially it makes it so that folks can search a city and look at the various venues. I think that this is where I would integrate an API of some sort. And they could sort by zip code or just city and country if they want to be more broad. I have these icons that I can imagine also implementing. And it would be nice, I don't know how involved this would be, but to have similar to what you can do in Google Maps, having a person that essentially, okay, to the right, where I don't know if y'all can see my mouse at the moment, but it would be nice if I was able to drag a person and place them in whatever location, and then having an image that's more 3D and interactive. I don't know how involved that is again, but that would be a nice feature. And so also there's a search bar here, which I would also like to have functioning at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely meeting all the requirements for this check-in. I would push yourself. So for the map page, we can definitely use the Google Maps. I think they may call it an SDK or an API. Kind of getting into semantics there of whatever they call it, but totally doable. And then it is pretty configurable to build your own interface. I don't want to say on top of it, but being able to kind of place your own pins, being able to customize what those pins look like. And then even to the point of being able to make it so that when they click on a pin, either a pop-up shows up with your own interface customized there, or you can, of course, make it so that when they click on a pin, it takes them to an entirely separate page of your website that is related to that pin.
Okay.
So I would say kind of brainstorm out what you want that when they click on a destination, what is that thing? Bringing it to a third party is totally fine. And this alone, even if you do take it to a third party, will meet all of the full stack requirements. But kind of think, where do I want to push myself? Not only in terms of getting more practice with code, but also like what makes my capstone unique, or what is something that I would really want to use from all of my travel experience. And you may decide that is building a destination guide, which, would let me build an itinerary, or which would help me. I'm this kind of traveler, and maybe I'm an OCD traveler and I like to have every minute of my day planned. Maybe I'm the type of traveler who doesn't have any plan and just shows up in a city for a week and figures it out from there, right? So if you are either one of those travelers or someone in between, what kind of website did you always wish you had, and what features are built into that you didn't have? Or maybe you go, hey, you know what I really want to do is I know I'm staying in this particular hotel. I'm always bad at planning something out. Maybe I make my map the star feature of the website, right? Where I can figure out what's there and click on a bunch of pins and say, build my list or my itinerary or my, ideas list, and make it kind of more of like a mood board for that trip kind of thing. I don't know. Bunch of different ideas there. You can say I don't like any of those, but I think you've got one more like feature, so to speak, that you'll want to figure out, whether that's the page after they click on a destination, whether that's how the map kind of interactively integrates with your site, whether that is building out a database of like all of these things to do. Lots of different options there, but I feel like there's just that one thing missing that you don't need for this capstone check-in. You get full credit for this one, but that one additional thing that I think you'll need to do, not a code level thinking about it, but like what's that thing to shoot for, and then you'll be good to go.
Sounds good. Thank you for all of your advice.
Of course. And interface is looking really good. So keep up the good work on that. It looks very pretty, and we always like pretty interfaces. All right. I think that is everyone. Did I miss anyone? Okie doke. I will get your grades updated in Canvas. All of you guys get full credit for this capstone check-in, which is, I think, the first time that we've had a capstone check-in where everyone has gotten full credit. So awesome job to you guys. Give yourself a pat on the back. It only accelerates from here, right? Your interfaces are looking really good. You're all over, well over the 50% mark. Don't forget that those one-on-ones are there for you, right? So as you're working on this, as you're getting stuck in different places, those one-on-ones are here. Obviously, we have a lot more to learn with React and the database and full stack coming up. We will bring Ryan back in for authentication. We'll bring Nathan back in for deploying your capstone onto the internet, which is optional, is not a requirement, just like React. However, we encourage you to get both of them out there, because most employers will say, well, give me an example of what you've built, right? Talk about a project. And if you're like, you're going to freeze up on the spot, but that capstone is there to be like, hey, this was a roller coaster. There were highs, there were lows. I did have light bulb moments. I did get stuck. This is what I want to build next on it. That real life experience is what employers want to see. Employers want to see that you didn't just open a textbook, read how to be a full stack developer, and go, all right, let me go apply for jobs, right? That project-based experience is what they are hiring you for. And so as you're going through your capstone, don't be afraid to journal. Don't be afraid to write a blog post. Record a YouTube video, right? Understand that this experience is something that is, you're going to get to the end of it and be like, man, I can't believe that everything that I built in here, and you're going to forget aspects of it. So don't be afraid to journal a little bit. Don't be afraid to kind of think about everything that is that you're learning from this. And don't forget to do project management, because there are going to be pieces that pop up where you're like, oh, I got to come back to this, or, oh, I really want to go work on this other thing, but I absolutely have to finish this feature before I move on to the next one. That's only going to get more complicated as we layer in full stack authentication, the database, that whole side of things. So counteract that with, well, I still have to learn how to do that before I can do it. But don't forget that once we are done with that topic, that means, hey, this is go time to go practice doing all of that. My link is always on my website for Calendly, and also linked in Canvas for one-on-ones. I have not forgotten about mentors. I am actually pulling in Caitlin for help on getting mentors assigned to you guys. So they will also be available to you. If you want to head up that network, we will get you access to them as soon as possible. But all things on the radar. I just got a booking notification, so glad you guys are taking advantage of one-on-ones. Okay, any questions about capstones, where we're headed, things in general? Terry.
So with like the mentors and stuff, do we after like when we ever like get our mentor, we still have to do the mentor meeting report, stuff like
We're
that?
going to encourage that you do a mentor check-in every other week for like only 15 to 30 minutes. But I don't think that we're going to make it a requirement and have it like impact your grade. The mentor system obviously was something that we had the best intentions for at the beginning of the program, and then I personally underestimated how hard it was going to be to get that off the ground and get that rolling. So obviously was not the smoothest rollout, and that happens certainly in technology. We will try and get that going for you, but I don't think we'll make it a requirement from the grading perspective. Joe, what's up?
Gonna ask what time you prefer to have meetings. I was looking at a weekend date, but it looks like if I schedule one, the latest one you have is for 11:30 a.m. If I wanted to do a back-to-back, you want me to keep it within those time frames?
If there is a time that isn't available on my calendar, just shoot me a Slack message. There is a good chance that I actually will be available at that time. Like my calendar, I think cuts off at 3, just so I have a break between both my jobs. But if you're like, oh man, I really can only meet at 3:30 and this is something that's like really holding me up, shoot me a Slack message and chances are I'll find a way to make it work. Any other questions? And back to backs, like an hour-long meeting, I try not to do because oftentimes 30 you can only hold so much in your brain in 30 minutes, right? And one-on-ones tend to be even more rapid fire than class time. But if you're like, I know for sure it's going to be a full hour, you can either book the back-to-back or shoot me a Slack message and I'll manually schedule you. All right, any other questions before we dive into React?
Yeah. What's with the assignment of the React Yeet? Like what is that about?
Is it locked in Canvas still? It should be.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So the React Yeet is kind of a little bit of a pop quiz. Whether you want to call it a pop quiz or pushing the babies out of the nest or just yeeting them into their own code, however you want to consider that, right? But as we progress here, what we have found is, and I think you guys will attest to feeling this as well. You watch along in class, you're coding along, you get stuck on something, you debug it a little bit, and you feel like you're doing fine. You're like, I get this. This is all great, right? And then you get out of class and you go to do it yourself and you go, oh shit, I forget how to do this. I don't know how to get started. I really thought I was getting all of this fine in class. What has happened to me, right? And that is the point of the yeets that we try to make a little bit more frequent as class goes on, right? And the point of them is not to make you crap yourself. There's a pop quiz coming. It's meant to be more of this is something that you should be able to do. That is a small portion of what we did in class, right? So I forget actually the details of the yeet. We will revisit that maybe on Thursday. I think I even save it until next week. But the idea there is to say, hey, this is a small little thing that you should be able to do to get practice. And we're going to spend 30 minutes or an hour in class. So if you are absolutely stuck on that, you can either ask to go into a breakout room or be like, Max, I have no idea how to do step number 3. How are we supposed to do that, right? And so that is the goal of the yeets, is to kind of push you and say, hey, I thought I was getting all of this. This is a smaller assignment. Let me make sure I'm not getting stuck on these little parts so I get a little bit more practice with that. And yes, yeeting is a natural part of nature. So, we should bring that into the classroom environment as well. That comes from, by the way, when we had TAs, and one of the TAs was like, I think they're getting this, but it's kind of hard to tell. And then someone said, you should yeet them. And I'm like, that's a good idea. So right on the spot, I came up with a little mini assignment. And we have, other than the terror of a pop quiz coming, we have gotten positive feedback from students that it was pushing them to a new level of understanding. So I don't want you guys to panic too much about it. All right, final call for questions before we set up our first React project. Okay. One thing that I want to share with you guys before we get started, there is and Joe, based off of your comment, I've been trying for probably 20 years to get maxmatthews.com and I cannot get it. And so I did the next best thing and got .ws. So it was like my name, which is great when you send someone a link because it looks cool. But then when you try and explain it to someone, you're like, oh, my URL is maxmatthey.ws, and then you get the whole 2 T's, and some names are easy to get domains and others are just really suck. So if you have not bought your domain yet of your name and it is available in a .com, I highly recommend it because it is a pain to get a name once it is already taken.
I don't want to flex too hard, but I do have josephmsmith.com.
Just rub it in. I think I could get Max Z Matthews, but I have mzm.tech. And that's like a nice little short one. And that used to be my LLC name. And then when I moved everything up to New York, I changed it to Zane.tech, which you guys may have seen in my email, or I use my Hack Upstate email. So yeah, there are alternatives there. But if you're doing a portfolio website and you're like, you are going to be verbally sharing that with someone, make sure that you think about how you would share your URL verbally before you buy a domain. Right, let me pop open the chat. Let me get set up here. Okay, so you guys know I am a big fan of documentation, but if you Google React docs, you will see that there is a react.dev link that comes up first. And then there's also this other reactjs.org. And if you're on reactjs.org, you go, well, this looks pretty official. And in fact, it was quite official up until about 6 months ago. And 6 months ago, they said, hey, we've been working on this new documentation for like 6 months now. We're finally going to pull the switch and switch over to this entirely new site. However, the documentation between both of them is slightly different. So if you go into the docs here, you will see that the main concepts are broken up a little differently. That's not a bad thing. You may find that the new site clicks for you more or the old site clicks for you more. If you are someone who is a reader, if you are someone who learns from a textbook more, this is a great place for you to do a little bit of background reading to prep for React. They say these docs are old and won't be updated. However, they are not out of date yet. There aren't any new features of React that you absolutely have to know in the new documentation that is not covered in the old documentation. So I just want to throw that out there as like, sometimes you get into a class and the textbook like stinks and you're like, if only I had a better learning resource, I would probably get this material a little bit more. Well, now you have that opportunity. The approach that I take in class is not the same as the old documentation or the new documentation. However, all of the concepts that I will be covering and all of the definitions are covered in both of them. So tonight we are going to set up our first React project. then we are going to make a little to-do list app, and we're going to see how we don't need the document object model. We're going to see a new concept called state, and we're even going to get into reusable components. That probably will be tomorrow, but you will see over here state and lifecycle, components, elements, right? These are all things that keywords that I'm saying that you don't know the definitions of yet, but are covered in this guide. If you switch over to the new site instead and go into Learn React, you will see that there are things over here like managing the state. I don't agree. I don't really like the newer way they have laid things out, but that doesn't mean that it won't be helpful for you, right? So I just want to mention the two different documentations. Everything that we are covering will be in both of them, but just wanted to lay that out. This is more of a I think this is more beginner friendly compared to the React documentation, which is more learn this concept, then learn this concept, then learn this concept. So if you are more of a step-by-step person, this may be the way to go. If you are more of a conceptual person of let me learn all the concepts and then I will figure out how to use them, the newer documentation is the way to go. But either way, they are both beneficial. You don't need to use both of them. You can figure out which one you like more. The newer documentation is probably slightly better because it will be updated over time. But at this point, both of them are up to date and in sync. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case you end up on one site or the other. Okay. Before we start our project, does anyone want to throw out what is React and why should we use it? Or have you heard of React?
Yeah, I never heard of React. I mean, I know my older brother talked about it, but I don't only know what it is. So
Okay, it's all right.
React is like a framework
Mhm.
for, I guess, to approach web development in a different way, where you're doing it all in JS and manipulating the HTML directly in the JS.
Yes. Yeah. So React is totally right on all of the above. React is a framework. A lot of people will call it a library. Don't get into the semantics of it. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, I think of it as a framework. Is a framework that makes it easier for us to build in two things: user interactivity and data into our web interfaces, right? So what we have seen so far is every time we get data from an API call, or every time that we want to generate out some HTML, we've run into having to use the document object model to do HTML in our JavaScript, but it isn't really HTML until we bridge in, right? And for 30 years of web development, that worked totally fine. But at some point, someone said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I could just update some data in a variable and have that magically update in my interface? Wouldn't it be great if I could say, hey, the user just changed this input in a form field. Let me just have my HTML reflect what they have already typed in. So React solves a couple problems. It introduces something called state. State is, and this is all covered in the terms list in Canvas as well. State is a special type of variable in React, and we're going to see it tonight. But state allows us to update that variable and have it automatically reflect in our HTML any place that we use that variable. It also solves for components, because as you guys may have run into in your HTML, hey, I've got this card, right? And the card has a picture and it has a title and it has the description. But every time I want to use that card, I need to copy and paste the HTML. So if I have 15 different blog posts on my site, I now have 15 divs that look all exactly the same, but just with different content inside of them. Well, that's kind of a pain, right? What happens if I want to update all of my cards? Now I need to go update all 15 of them. So what React does is it sets us up to be able to create reusable components where I can define what one card looks like, and using a concept called props, pass in the data that is different on all of that. Now I can update that component in one spot, that file in one spot, and have it applied to all the different places on the site that I happen to use that card. So don't panic at, oh my God, I need to move my entire capstone over to React. We have 3 weeks of React, and we are going to continue to revisit previous projects like the weather and like the blog project, and see how we can convert our HTML code over into React. But to get started tonight, we are going to use a command called create React app, which is actually in the older documentation. There's a newer version of it called, or a newer alternative to it called Vite or Vite. I forget how it's pronounced. But create React app has kind of been the go-to standard for years. So that's what we're going to be using. Although if you do see Vite or Vite, that is a totally fine alternative and kind of where the community has been slowly switching over to. So with all of that said, let's dive into our first React project. So we are going to create our, nope, we already have a week 13 folder. We are going to take our week 13 folder and we are going to head into the terminal. Okay, so command space to pop open Spotlight, type out terminal, and hit enter. And you guys are going to get a little terminal lesson, whether you knew it was headed your way or not. So a lot of people see the terminal and panic. That's a totally natural response to this. The biggest thing I think is to know in the terminal is that wherever you are in the terminal, you are actually in what they call a working directory or a folder. And I know you guys have gotten a little bit of exposure from Ryan on the terminal, but trying to reinforce some concepts here, right? So when we are in the terminal, we can type in. Okay, that's at the bottom of the screen. We can type in PWD and hit enter. PWD stands for print working directory. The working directory is just saying this is the folder that we're currently working in the terminal. You can see that it says we are in users hackup state because that's the user profile that I'm signed into. Well, where is that? We can actually find that by going into Finder and going over to go up at the top and down to computer. If we open up Macintosh HD and open up users, you can see it is telling me I am inside the hack upstate folder. Okay, again, that was PWD for print working directory. What if I would like to list out all of the folders that are inside of our working directory? Well, in Finder, we can just double click on the folder to open it and we see what's inside of it. In the terminal, we can type in ls, which stands for list, ls, and that will print out all of the different folders that are inside our current working directory. Questions so far? Joe.
My C6 folder is in iCloud.
That is not a problem. You'll see the solution around that in 1 second. Okay, so now that we can print working directory, which is printing out the path of where we are and listing out everything, we should be able to change our working directory. Well, we do that with CD, change directory. So I'm going to say CD and put a space, and now it needs to know what directory do we want to change into. I would like to change into my desktop directory because I'm trying to get to my C6 my code. So I am going to cd into desktop. And what you should see is that the little command here changed the word desktop, but we can confirm that command worked because if we run pwd print working directory again, it will now show us that we are down at in the desktop. We could keep going here and say, all right, cd into C6 my code, but there's a shortcut here. And Joe, this should get you around your problem. We can also type in cd, put a space, that space is super important, and then in Finder, we can navigate to our week 13 folder and drag that into the terminal. And what that will do is we'll print out the entire path to my week 13 folder. If I hit enter there, it should change me into my week 13 folder. If everything is working properly, we can pwd again, and it will print out that we are actually down in our week 13 folder. Spaces matter in terminal, and every enter press you do matters in terminal. The enter is what is actually running the command. Does anyone not have, when they run pwd, not see that the week 13 folder is their current working directory? The next command will make hell go to hell in a handbasket, whatever that phrase is. Things will get really weird if we run this next command in the wrong spot. So it is very important to understand, one, that whenever we are in terminal, pwd prints out where we are when we're running the command. And two, that we can cd, change directory, put a space, and we can type out the path, or we can cheat, go into Finder and drag the folder right into terminal to have it autocomplete where we are at. Terry.
So when you close out the terminal, will it still be on like week 13 or will it like start over?
It usually starts all over. I don't think it remembers your session history, although there are ways to configure that. Okay, we are now going to create our first React app. So we are going to type in npx. We have now seen four different commands off the top of my head, other than pwd, ls, cd, all of those. We have seen curl, C-U-R-L, which is for making an API call from the terminal. You've learned that from Ryan. We've seen the node command, which is how we can run a JavaScript file right on our computer without a browser. We haven't seen npm yet, but we will be learning that. That's Node Package Manager. npm is how we install other people's extensions or frameworks or libraries. And now we are learning the final new command that we'll be using for a while, which is npx. npx is built into npm, at least the newer versions of it the past couple years, and it stands for Node Package Execute. Yes, it should be E, but they went for X. And it is a way to run a command that we don't necessarily have installed yet. Now, this always gets a little dicey because I already have Create React app installed, but you are going to type in create-react-app. Make sure there is a space between npx, Create React app, which will have dashes, another space, and then we are going to call it to do. If you hit the enter command there, it may say Create React app is not installed. If it does say that, hit the Y key on your keyboard and hit enter to allow that to install. If you have what I have that says installing packages, this may take a couple minutes. We are going to let it cook here. So while it is installing and downloading and doing all of that good stuff, I am going to tell you guys to go do attendance. The secret word for tonight is create React app. If yours is still running in the background, it is downloading and installing a lot of really good stuff. That is okay. Just let it sit for a while. Go do attendance. The secret word tonight is create React app. With or without dashes is totally fine. And then you can go on break and be back at 7:25. And it's okay to leave that running in the background. I will check with you guys when we get back. If it is not installed, we will deal with it then. Create React app, secret word for attendance, and then go ahead on break 7:25. Terry.
Is it all right that the terminal said 8 and vulnerabilities, 2 is moderate, 6 is high? Is that a okay?
Yeah, no concern there. I have it as well. I just wasn't scrolled up to it. All right, see you guys after break. To our first React app. So in our week 13 folder, if everything went correct, you should see a new folder called To Do. Does anyone not see a To Do folder inside their week 13? This is where the terminal can go wrong. Lots of little commands we have to run to make this work. So if you do not have a To Do folder in your code, speak now or forever hold your peace.
I don't, but that's only because I made it like a type error. Instead of to do, I put a D instead of a T. So
That's fine as long as it doesn't have a space in the name. A space in the name could cause some problems. Okay. We are going to take our to-do folder and we are going to drag it into VS Code. VS Code continues to be our text editor of choice. It supports React because React uses a different language called JSX. JSX is like a combination of JavaScript and HTML. So if we go into our SRC folder, we see something a little different. SRC stands for source. It's our source code, right? It's the code that is running our is going to be running our application. And we, instead of index.html, we see app.js. Well, how is that possible, right? It's all showing in the browser. Doesn't the browser always need an index.html? It does. And it is actually hiding under a folder called public. So if we pop open public, we see HTML that we're kind of used to with a couple weird things in between. So we have our head tag, and we are allowed to modify any of the information in here, just like we could on any other website. We have our title tag, which we should remember to update if we're doing any kind of production application. So we can go ahead and update that now. Let's call that to do. And then you will see down here, it has this div ID root. And it tells us in this HTML comment, hey, you probably shouldn't be doing anything in here unless you really know what you're doing with React. So it is okay to add to the head tag, but we really shouldn't be doing anything in the body. Okay, well, if we don't do anything in the body, where do we work on our React code? Well, under SRC, we can pop open app.js and we see something kind of funky going on here, right? We see imports, which we haven't learned in JS yet. If you went through Free Code Camp, you may have seen imports. We will learn more about them. We got a function app and we're like, okay, cool, that's JavaScript and functions can return something. And then all of a sudden it switches over and we're in HTML land. And it's like, well, that's kind of funky. All right, we'll get into that in a second. But what we want to do is see where all of this is coming out. So if I come down here and I click on my go live, it pops this open. And I'm like, well, what is this? Right? Like, that's not what I want. And if I go into SRC and click on my app.js, it just gives me my function. And I'm like, well, none of that is particularly helpful. So how do we get our React to work? Well, what React is doing is taking our JSX code and transpiling it. It's kind of like compiling it into both JavaScript and HTML that the browser can run. So the browser natively can't run React code unless two things happen. We can either build our application, and if we build the application, it will be in regular JavaScript and HTML, or we can run what they call a dev server. And a dev server is going to let us run our server locally, access our React code, and whenever we update it, just like live server is going to do, the go live button in VS Code, the React server will update our code and make it runnable for us. So in order to do that, we're going to come over to back to VS Code. I'm going to stop my live server. You cannot use the go live button when we're working with React. And that's going to be something really important for you to remember, because you're going to hit the go live button a gazillion times and you're going to be like, it's not working. We cannot use go live, the live server, with VS Code. What we need to do instead is I'm going to right click over in my file area. It doesn't matter if you right click on a file or in the empty space. We're going to open an integrated terminal. And based off of what we just learned, the terminal is always in a specific location, right? There's always a working directory we're in. So we can run pwd here and it will show us that we are in my code week 13 to do. Well, how did it know to do that? One of the benefits of the terminal in VS Code compared to the one in Mac OS is that when we right click and open an integrated terminal, it's automatically doing a CD for us down into whatever folder we have open. Now, this will be really important. If you are in week 13 to do, it doesn't matter anything after that. But if you are only in week 13, but not in to do, we have a problem. So we want to make sure that when this is open, we're not just in week 13, we're also in to do. If all of that is set up right, we can run a command called npm run start. The run word is actually optional there. This will work without the word run, but it's a good habit to use the word run. We'll get into the why later. So I'm going to do npm run start and hit enter. And it's going to fire up something that says starting the development server. And then we get our first React app. Does anyone not have a spinning React logo at the moment? Okay. Now,
Can
because,
you,
yeah.
Can you show what you did again?
Yeah, so right click over in VS Code, open an integrated terminal. That will bring you to the terminal down here. And it should say SRC or to do right here. And then you can type in npm run start with spaces in between them and hit enter. And that will pop open the new tab with localhost 3000.
It gave me a Visual Studio gave me a pop-up. Do I allow it?
Sure. What's it asking you to allow? I'm curious.
It gave me the same pop-up too. I didn't read
Yeah.
it though.
Yeah.
It should have.
For the
It's
React
safe.
thing.
It's so VS Code could communicate with Google Chrome.
Ah, okay, cool. All right, anyone not have a spinning React logo? Okay. So now that we've got the terminal running, you should see this compiled successfully. This terminal is going to be really helpful for when you're writing React code, because now that we have a dev server running, sometimes it may be showing you an error that the browser console won't. So you're going to want to check and have this terminal running in the background, keep an eye on it while you're developing, because it will give you warnings, which aren't really stopping your code from working, but could stop your code from working down the road, or it will give you a flat out error. And it will tell you, I don't understand your code. There's something wrong here. I'm not even going to bother sending that to the server. Okay, well, in this terminal, we now have this running. But that begs the question, how do we stop it from running? Well, why would we want to stop it from running? Well, this is now taking up port 3000 on your computer. Your computer has thousands of web ports that are available to it. 3000 happens to be the one that React defaults to. If you tried to run another React project at the exact same time of this, it would come up and it would say 3000 is already taken. Would you like me to use another one? Well, you can say no on that, go stop your other server and restart this one, or you can stop this server from running. So once you close this VS Code window, once you quit out of VS Code, or once you shut down your computer, all three of those will stop the server. But the way that we can stop the server manually is click into the terminal so it has our focus, and then hit Control, not Command, Control C. And Control C is kind of the universal command for stop a command from running in the terminal. There are more forceful ways of getting a command to stop running, but Control C will stop it. Now you will see we have our terminal command line back up. So we can run other commands here, but we do want our dev server running so we can edit some code and see where it's all showing up, right? So I'm going to come back into my terminal. I could type in npm run start again, or you can hit the up arrow and that will automatically refill the last command that you ran, and hit enter on that again, and Node should turn back on. So we've got our compiled successfully, and it says edit source app.js and save to reload. Anyone have any terminal commands? Remember, you cannot use go live. You must run the npm run start command to get React running on a dev server so that we can work with it. Okay. So let's dive into our React code a little bit. We have a function going on here, and we've got a name of it called app, which is kind of interesting. This is the first component that we are seeing. Components are just functions that return HTML, and they start with a capital letter. That's all a component is, and we're going to see how we can use components down the road. But what we are going to do is build our first to-do app. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to delete out this entire header. And that should clear out my page. So I only left that parent div going on there. And then I'm going to go over to my app.css, and I'm going to go ahead and clear all of that out as well. I'm not deleting the file itself. I'm just clearing it out so there's nothing in there. And then app.js should look like this. And I'm realizing I did not start a live share, so I will fix that. Live share link is in the chat if you would like to join. Okay, so only weird thing we've seen about React so far is that the functions, which can be components, are returning some HTML. And in order for the browser to know how that is working out, we need to have the server running in the terminal to see that in our browser. Now that we do, we can add in HTML like we normally do. So I'm going to add in a little h1. If you have Prettier enabled, you will notice Prettier continues to work. Prettier also supports JSX. React is probably one of the most popular, if not the most popular, web frameworks at the moment. And so React is widely supported in VS Code and other dev tools. So it says to-do list app. that shows up in our browser, and we're good to go. So the first thing I want to do, how do we build a to-do list app? Well, we need an input. We need to get the text from that input, and then we need to add that data to our page. So I'm going to start with my input. I will add in a type of text. And I will add in maybe a UL with an LI that says no list items yet. Okay. Well, in order to add a list item, I also probably need a button that is a type of submit that says add task. And we can put all of that in a form. The run command is npm run start in the terminal. And this is what we should have going on. Let me adjust my windows here so you can see everything. Joe.
I'm noticing that instead of quotes coming up after type, it's putting the whatever you call them, the backticks.
Oh, the backticks?
No. Yes, is that what they're called? Or maybe they're just single quotes then. In regular HTML, when putting something in, if you were to do type equals, it would do like type equals and autocomplete with the double quotes. Is that just a thing with React, or is there?
Mine are double
going on there?
quotes, so I'm not quite sure why
Oh.
you're getting single quotes.
I'm getting single quotes.
It may be a specific extension that you have installed. React is not picky about its quote type. It will use single quotes or double quotes and support those. It will not support backticks unless you do curly braces, which is kind of a niche thing. But I wouldn't worry about the single quotes. We can get down to the bottom of like, there's an extension causing that or something going on. Okay, anyone not have this interface showing in their browser? All right. So what would we normally do here, right? We would type in some task. And when we hit the add task button, we would come into our form and add an on submit, right? Or we could go into our JavaScript script.js file and go say document get element by ID, yada, yada, yada. But we are now at the intersection of HTML and JavaScript. So anything between this return and the function up at the top, we can actually write some JavaScript in. And to prove that, we can console log something like hi out. And if we pop over to our inspect, we will see the word hi comes out. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. I will comment that out. But what we can also do is come into our form and add something called on submit. Notice that it is a capital S in the on submit. It is not all lowercase. React is a big fan of camel casing wherever it can. And so it will camel case pretty much any HTML attribute that we're working with here. So I'm going to put this on submit here, and I'm going to call that add task. Now, what are those curly braces doing? We haven't seen curly braces in an on submit before. Those curly braces are telling React, the JSX, hold up here, this isn't HTML anymore. I want you to temporarily switch over to JavaScript mode and know that whatever I'm typing in here is something related to JavaScript. Well, where do we put our add task? We already know we can write some JavaScript up here. So I can say const add task equals some event that is going to console.log form submitted. Now, the only other thing that we need to add up here is our event.prevent default. Remember, forms have that pesky behavior that they think you're saving it into the server. That is still the same in React. The JavaScript is JavaScript. The browser is going to try and submit the form over to the server. We don't want that to happen, which is the default action. So we say event prevent default here. We can add in our console log form submitted, and then we link the on submit right here. If all of that works as expected, when we come over to our to-do list app over here, I can type in ABC, I can hit the add task button, and I should see form submitted in the console. Pausing there, giving you guys a second to catch up. If you do not see form submitted in the console, let me know.
Yeah. So a quick thing, just in the inspect tab, I do see an error message kind of that reads, download the React Dev Tools for a better development experience. So that's just something.
That, yeah, I don't have that because I have the DevTools
Right.
installed.
Okay, perfect.
That I'm glad you mentioned that though, because I'm sure other students are seeing it as well. We will get into the DevTools probably early next week. They are helpful, but they're not like the end of the world for getting started with React.
And just another thing, because I'm reading that, I'm actually not able to see any output in the console, but I feel like I should still be able to see it.
Did you click the add task button?
Nope.
Good to go
I'm
now.
all set then.
Yeah, I have a question. It's telling me something's already running at port 3000 probably. So I don't know why I'm getting that.
It may just be that you had it open in another terminal window. If you hit the Y button, it should move it over to 3001 or 3002, and then everything should work as expected.
Okay, yeah, I got it.
That becomes more of a problem once we get into full stack, because our Node API will be running on 3001 or 3002. So we do want to be careful, but when we're just like kind of playing around with our first apps, it's okay to have it run on another port. Other questions? Okay. So we now have two options. We have right now what is called an uncontrolled input. What does an uncontrolled input mean? Well, we've been working with uncontrolled inputs since all of the JavaScript we've been writing. It is uncontrolled by React. So there are two ways of accessing the data that is in that input. We've already seen one of them where we can console log out our event target elements. And inside of that, we would get access to the input here, and we can grab the value from it from there. But that's not the React-y way of doing it. React has something called state. What is state? State is a very special variable that when we update state, it will automatically cause that value to re-update in our HTML. Let's take a look at how that works. I'm going to take out my console log here because we are going to use a controlled input, and we are going to use our first hook. A hook is just a function that we can build, that we can hook into React's functionality. We are going to, and hooks almost always start with the word use. So I'm going to do a const up here, and state's a little weird. We can't update state by setting a value. We have to use a special function for it. So I'm going to say task text and set task text is equal to use state. And in the parentheses, I'm going to put in empty quotes. Okay, what's going on there? task text is the value of the variable in state. It can be any kind of JS data type, object, string, Boolean, number, whatever, the whole list. We're going to see how this works in a second. We can't just say task text is now equal to this new thing. We have to use this set function and then use state. It doesn't know what that is yet. We're going to tell it how to get there. And then what goes in that value? That is going to be the default value. What does that variable start out as? Now, if we look in our browser, we have our first React error, and it shows up in two places. It is showing up in our browser, but it also is showing up in our terminal over here. Those two should always match, but if for whatever reason it's not in the browser, you can always check your terminal and see that it is met. It is telling us in app.js line 5, use state is not defined. We need to tell it, where does use state come from? This isn't just built into JavaScript, but it is built into React. And so what we do is we come up to our app.js and we say import use state from React. If yours auto imported, that's totally fine. Or if you use autocomplete, it also may have dropped that in. But if you have the error, you can go ahead and type this in up at the top. Okay, now it's just chilling here. It's like, all right, const new variable, you're using state. Where do you want to hook this in? Where do you want to use this? So I'm going to come down to this input, and we have to do two things here. If we throw a value on here, we've seen value before, but this time we're going to do our curly braces and put in our task text. So we do that, we come over here, I type, and nothing happens. I've like made my text field read only. This is a very common mistake to make when you're wiring up your state. When you are telling React, hey, I would like you to control the value of this input using state. If you ever are in a situation where you have value set, but you can't type into the text field, it is because you need the second property, which is on change. So we're going to say on change. Again, make sure you got your capital C there because it is camel cased for the event name. We're going to put our curly braces in, and this is kind of cool. We could put the function up here, but because we put the curly braces in, React is like, yo, you're in JavaScript mode. I don't care that we're in the middle of HTML. Curly braces switch over to React or switch over to JavaScript, and we are going to put a function in there. And that function is going to take the event parameter, because on change is the event, and we are going to say set task text equal to to event target value. I am going to pause there, but if this is working, we should be able to type in ABC in our form input. I'm going to start a poll just to make sure you guys are good to go. Again, all that should be working is your input should be working, and you have the value and the on change as part of your input. You will also need up here the task text and the use state.
I'm getting an unexpected use of event on line 17. However, I'm on a different computer, so just give me a second.
Sure. Just take a look at your on change. Make sure that your curly braces and your parentheses all line up there because there's a lot going on there. And if you still can't find the problem in that on change, feel free to switch over computers.
I have a question. Do you like automatically like press enter and make new lines when you code, or does Prettier do that for you?
Back in the old days, the only way to do it was hitting the enter button. So I do have some of that muscle memory, but I do rely on Prettier to do like this on change.
Yeah.
I let Prettier do that for me, right? But there are also times where out of muscle memory, I just hit enter or the autocomplete looks right. And so I hit enter for the autocomplete. So I would say it's probably 25% me hitting enter and 75% of the time me relying on Prettier. But you can use Prettier so much that it becomes a crutch, right? And so I think you guys have seen when I'm doing your div soup or when, we've got Prettier is mad at you, and we got to figure out where it is. Because I have spent all of those years matching parentheses and doing indentation manually, it has made it much easier for me when Prettier isn't working to find the problem. So I would say that's kind of a double-edged sword of, yes, I do rely on Prettier, but only because I know I've got that experience to fall back on.
Okay.
Very good question. If it is working, you should be able to click into your form input and type in a couple letters. Looks like most of you have voted in. Anyone need one more minute?
I need one more minute.
You got it. Just as a review for everyone, we added this import use state up at the top so that it knew to hook into React. We set up our variable kind of in a funky way. We got two different things coming out of that, our task text and our set task text. The use state is coming from our import, and then what is in those parentheses is the default value, basically what our text starts out as. To kind of prove that, we could put in the word hello up here, and you would see that that shows up in our form input when the page first loads. But because we don't want any text in there, to start, we're going to start it out as an empty string. We come down here and we wire up our value to our task text. That is lining up with what is up here. And then we have our on change, which is setting the task text. That is coming from the event of the on change itself. Because we put it in curly braces, React is switching over from HTML mode to JavaScript mode. It is getting that event target value and is setting it into the task text from up here. You need help debugging, Michael, or are you good to go?
I'm gonna need some help.
You go for it.
This is me on the left here.
Okay. So let me request remote. And all we need is right in here, the event that is getting generated from the on change is what
Okay.
trickles down into our function.
All right.
That was
So,
the same issue I had.
yep,
Good. Thank you.
no problem. Whenever I don't go in order, it's always a tricky thing because you think I'm down on the next line and then like, oh crap, I need access to the event. And so I'll add that into the function, but that I know that that's easy to get lost in there. Okay. So we've got everything wired up for this input. Now we can take advantage of that. But we got to think about, well, how is this going to work? Normally what we would do is we would say, let HTML to generate equal an empty string, and then we'd have to loop over all of our tasks. Well, if we want to store all of our tasks, we could make just another variable, but we want to make, again, a special kind of variable that says whenever we update this, it is automatically going to redo our page and figure out what has changed. So in order to accomplish that, we're going to make another state variable, and we're going to call that tasks. And we are going to call the second one set tasks. It is naming convention, not a requirement, but is naming convention to always make the first one the name of the variable, the second one the set function that we use to update that variable. And we are going to use state again. We don't need to redo this import because it is already imported. We can use that import as many times as we need. And this time we are going to start our variable out as an empty array. Now, in our add task function, we are going to say set tasks to an array with our task text in it.
I have
Then-
a question real quick.
Yeah.
The inset task text, you are telling it to store inside an array, but wouldn't it already be putting it inside an array, or are you just declaring it the use state as an array beforehand?
Set tasks always overwrites whatever is in the variable already with whatever you're putting inside the parentheses.
I got you. So is it not entirely necessary to put use state and to like initialize it as an empty array?
It is, because when the page first loads, we are going to want to map over it, which we haven't done already. And if we don't start it out as an empty array, it won't know what the map function is.
Gotcha.
Terry.
So with the cons with the text task test, and I know you put the square brackets in between. Is those square brackets are required to use state, or
They are, and here's why. Because use state is returning two things, right? So we can't, if we just said something like const a b equals some function, JavaScript is like, what's going on with the comma there, right? Use function can't really return two things. So what ends up happening is use state is returning two things. We have to give JavaScript a heads up that two things are coming out of it. And so we use the square brackets there to basically say, hey, there's an array of two items coming out of use state, and we want to get access to both of them.
so is it like similar to like parameters?
You kind of, but in reverse, right? Parameters are what we send into a function compared to what we're doing right now, which is what is coming out of the function, which is the return value. So it kind of is. This is technically called array destructuring. Getting into the weeds of JavaScript a little bit. But basically, because two things are coming out of use state, we have to use the square brackets to say an array of two items is coming out of use state, and we want access to both of them. If you typed in that AB code, go ahead and delete that. That was just an example. Okay, now we get to make it work. So we come down here. I'm going to take out my li, and and I'm going to switch into JavaScript mode by putting in my curly braces. And I'm going to say tasks. And before, we have seen a for loop, right? And we've seen while loops and do while loops, but we are going to use a new kind of loop called .map. And .map is going to give us access to each individual task. And what do we want to do for each individual task? We want to return a list item that has the task inside of it. You're going to do one more line of code, and then we are done for the night, and we are going to comment the hell out of this code. There's a lot of concepts going on here. Okay, so we come over here, I type in ABC, and I hit add task, and I see ABC show up. Okay. On the right track, we're going to have one more bug, though. If I come up here and type in DEF and hit add task, my ABC disappears. I'm like, darn it. I wanted both of them to show up. So where's that happening? Well, that's probably in my add task. We're doing our set tasks, and what set tasks is doing is overwriting whatever was in tasks with this new value. So it should be as easy. Don't follow me on this. But theoretically, we should be able to say, hey, tasks.push are task text. But this is breaking a rule. We never can update the value of the state without using the set function. So we're not allowed to say tasks.push because that's modifying tasks directly. And we're not allowed to say something like tasks equals, something new. We're not allowed to do that either. These variables coming from state are what we call immutable. Immutable just is a really fancy word in computer science for a variable that shouldn't change. In fact, we even say const here to know, hey, we shouldn't be updating those values directly. So what we need to do is find some way to say, hey, set tasks to whatever is currently in tasks plus whatever the new thing is that I've added in there. We can accomplish that with what they call a spread operator. So what we are going to do is say, take whatever is inside tasks, spread it out into this new array that we just created here, and then at the end of that array, add in the task text. If all of this is working, you should be able to come over to your React app, add in ABC, add in 1, 2, 3, and have your list going. Pause there, see if anyone has questions, and then we are going to go through a visual flow of all of this and a commented flow of all of this. So you have two different levels of understanding, two different approaches of understanding.
I remember doing this from the free code care, but I never really understood like what the dot really like does exactly. Like I was actually having trouble with it until actually ChatGPT for help for that. I think for that question, yeah.
Yeah, so this ... is called the spread operator. It is new-ish to JavaScript. And so what the spread operator does is it literally spreads out whatever the values of tasks are into this new array, right? So if I said something like, hey, go make a new array and put tasks in new array, and then also put the new task in, right? So exactly the same thing as what we're doing down here, except without the spread operator. Well, look at what ends up happening here. If I type in 1, 2, 3, I now have an array with 0 items in it and the 1, 2, 3 that I typed in. Well, if I do another thing of 4, 5, 6 and add it in, now I've got an array with 1 item of 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6. Well, if I do that one more time, and add it in, now I've got an array with 2 items of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, 8, 9. Well, why is it doing that? Because it is taking tasks, which is an array itself, and putting it in a new array with the task text. So we keep on keeping that original array with all the values inside of it and adding another item after it. So what the 3 dots is doing is saying, yes, I know the original tasks is an array, but take whatever is inside of it, spread those values out into the new array, and then add this item after it, which is the comma task text. So the spread operator is basically just saying, bust out the old array and spread it out into this new one. Does that help? ChatGPT could have explained that better as well. But spread is basically saying ignore the outer array, just take all of the values inside of it. Okay, do we have any questions right out of the gate, or does anyone not have code
Yes.
working before we go through this
I have a
visually and then
question.
also go through it comment level?
I have this strange error.
Yep.
Saying, warning, each child in the list should have a unique key prop.
I do have that error as well. That is okay. We will learn how to fix that probably in the next project.
Thank you.
It gets a little too complicated for day one, but yes, that is a warning. I have it right here. Any other questions? Okay, so let's talk through this visually before I comment everything out.
Max.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have no idea what's wrong with it. So I'm just gonna show you.
Go for it. I don't know why Zoom keeps on hiding the chat. So if you put something in chat and I'm not responding, just slap me across the face and come off mute. Okay, task text is not defined because right under your function app, you have task text.
Ah, thank you.
And you're going to have that wrong also on 21. And now I think you should be good to go. Cool.
Thanks.
Of course. Anyone else need help? Okay. So how is this all wired up? We start at the top and we work our way down. Let me see. Just gonna zoom out a little bit there. So sorry if it's smaller than usual, but keeping it all on the screen will be very helpful. Okay, so when we start, we start at the top. We have this function app. That function app is a component in React. A component is a reusable chunk of code. It can be used once and only once, or it can be used multiple times. We know it's a component for 2 reasons. 1, it starts with a capital letter, and 2, it has a return function down here that is returning out some HTML. A component in React always needs to return something inside of it. So we start out with this new kind of way of declaring a variable. both of these use states are coming from React. Use state is a hook that is built into React. A hook just means something that we can literally hook some pre-built functionality into that automatically updates. Use state is a little funky though, because use state cannot be edited directly. Whenever we need to update the value of that, which is the first thing that comes out of use state, we need to use this set function here. What's the only other part of use state that we pay attention to? That is what is between the parentheses, which is the parameter of use state. And that is going to be the first value. What does the state start out as? So in our task text, because we didn't want anything to show up in the text input, we started it as a string. In the use state here, we started it as an empty list so that we could deal with looping over that list down the road. As with JavaScript, we ignore this entire const add task here because it's a function. Functions don't run unless we call that function directly, or we have an event that triggers that function. So we ignore everything in the add text, and we get down to the return. The return has an H1. We have now switched into HTML mode. We do this form here, and then we have curly braces. Those curly braces are saying, hold up, there's some JavaScript-y thing going on here. So when onSubmit happens, yes, it's camel cased, but onSubmit does the same thing. Go find add text up here. So we have now linked the onSubmit function right here without having to use the document object model. We then come into our input and we use some of those same properties. We set value in curly braces and onChange in curly braces. Curly braces again, switch into JavaScript mode. But now we have linked the value of this input to task text, which is coming up from our use state, and our set task text, which is also coming from the use state. Then nothing happens here because we haven't typed anything in yet. We've just linked everything up. And then we come down to this UL and we see tasks.map. .map is another kind of a loop. But it's kind of like a for loop. We would say for const task of tasks, right? Well, here we do it in reverse. We say map over all of the tasks to get us access to each individual task. Well, where are these tasks coming from? They're coming from our use state again. Our use state started out as an empty array. So when this page first loads, it comes in here and it goes, well, there are no tasks, so we are going to ignore this return. Now the React is done. It's like gone to bed. It's like, all right, I've done everything that I needed to do. Now we come into this and we type a letter into our input. The input triggers an event. The event target value now has whatever letter we have typed into it. We then send that into set task text. Set task text is going to come up here, update whatever the event target value was into our state, and store that whatever is typed in into task text here. Pausing there. Any questions about any of that? This is called a controlled input flow because React is controlling the value of the input using state. Okay. Now, what happens from here? Every time they type a letter in, this onChange is going to update the value in state. And we keep on doing this onChange right here until the person is done typing. They then either click on the add task button or they submit the form. That triggers the add task right here. The add task now comes up and runs our function. our function is going to event prevent default. We've seen that before. It's the form submission. Nothing changes there. It logs out our form submitted. Okay, all of that is standard. And then it does something kind of funky here. It calls set tasks. Well, we've seen set task text. This time we are linking it to the set tasks coming from state. However, we can't just push into our tasks array because remember, we're never allowed to update the first variable in our state directly. So instead we get a little clever. We say take whatever tasks already are in that array. Right now there aren't any because it's the first item added. But take them and spread them out into this new array that we are creating right here. And after you've spread out all of the existing task items, go get the task text. Well, where is the task text coming from? That's coming from our state, which was updated from set task text, which was updated here in our on change. So this is updating the state of task text until we run our add task on submit function, which is then combining all of the tasks that are currently in state in the array and adding on the task text at the end of it. Then we go into the set tasks here. That updates the set tasks in the array. But because we're using state, something really interesting happens here. We don't have to say document get element by ID inner HTML. React is going to wait for the biggest dad joke of all time, react to the state getting updated. That is the entire point of React, is that it will automatically react the DOM to changes being made to variables in state. So this task right here all of a sudden wakes up because set tasks was called. So the tasks here goes, oh, you just set something in state. I need to go re-evaluate what's going on in the HTML. And so it goes, I don't give a crap about any of this input stuff. I don't give a crap about this whole form, really. What is using tasks? Tasks is getting used right here. So I now need to wake up and go, oh, tasks have now changed. Let me loop over each one of them. When I'm looping over each one of them, I'm going to give you access to each individual task. What task would you like? How would you like each task to show up? I would like a list item to show up, a bullet point item to show up, and I'm going to take that task from the parameter and show it curly braces. So I'm switching over to JavaScript mode, take whatever text is set from that loop coming from state and make that text show up as a list item here. And that is going to happen every time that we hit the add task button. We are updating the state, which is updating the variable called tasks, which is going to make this map rerun every time we update the state.
So why not use a while or like a for loop to loop it?
Because we need to basically pass the items of sorry, my brain went in like 19 different directions there. The very short answer is because map returns the results of the loop in a React friendly way. You could use a for loop. Don't follow me on this, just a quick example. You could say like let tasks HTML equal an empty array, and for const task of tasks HTML dot push list item with the task in it. And then instead of mapping over all of the tasks, make the tasks HTML show up instead. And that also works the same way. But you can see this kind of gets messy because we need to be above the HTML. We need to make an array. We loop over it. We can push into that array, but then we need to make that result kind of show up in our HTML. And so we can't use curly braces and multiple lines of code unless we're above the return. So the reason why we use that map is because it's all technically one line of JavaScript compared to this approach, which we need multiple lines. We need to make the empty array, and then we need a line to loop over it. We also need to push all of those items in. So that's why we use the .map, because it's technically only one line of JavaScript that we can do in line, but this would be another approach to doing it. We just tend to, in React, use map instead of for loops if we're doing it inside of the JSX itself, inside the HTML half. Joe, what's up?
I just posted something in the chat, but
Damn it,
does the
dude.
main method originate from React, or is it a vanilla JS thing?
It is vanilla JS. It works the same way that map works in vanilla JS. In fact, I think it is using vanilla JS. The only thing that React is doing there is recognizing that an array of elements are to be rendered on the page. So that's the only React part of it. But .map is definitely vanilla JS. Other questions about this? So if you are like, Max, I'm not a visual person. I hate it when you draw on the screen. That makes no sense to me. Or you're like, I never remember that. It makes sense when you do it, but not when, I'm actually reviewing it. That's okay. Tomorrow we will review all of this code again, just to get those concepts in your mind. But this time, instead of drawing the lines all over the screen, I'll take the numbered approach, right? Of, hey, let's write this out so that it is cemented in. I'm kind of curious, before I let you guys go, I'm going to do a quick poll. And then I will let you guys get out of here. And we will start with this tomorrow, and then we will revisit the I think the weather app is next. Okay, go ahead and vote in the poll, and then you guys can get out of here.
It's a good thing both is an answer, because I like both.
Totally fine. I'm just curious. Cool. Thank you guys for that. It looks like slight preference to the numbered comments in the code, but sounds like they're both helpful for understanding. So we will definitely keep on reviewing the concepts and not making it just app heavy. Obviously, lots of work to go in React. Believe it or not, we have just covered about 80% of the React concepts. So while these are kind of ethereal to understand, right? Things like state being a little funky, components and returning JS, reusing components, and then we're going to get into a little bit of routing. But other than those, that's kind of all of what React is. So it's definitely a little different. You may not like it at first, but we will continue to build these apps up and see kind of how state lets you avoid the complexities of the DOM and manually syncing in variables into your application. So if you have any initial thoughts of how day 1 of React went, fill out 30-second feedback form. Too fast, too slow, just right, whatever it is, that's totally fine. Otherwise, have an awesome evening. I will see you guys tomorrow night.
Hey, Max, I got one last question.
Yeah,
Just, like,
shoot.
super quick. So where can we, like, I guess, like, practice React? Just like a little small little thing. Like, I don't want to get overhead of myself, but I do want to like actually like, because I noticed when I do like a little like small little project, I do attend to learn more. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
So you can, I mean, you can remake the to-do app. That's a good way to do it. Just make sure you get practice with Create React app, because that's something that we'll do in class a bunch of times. But the complexities of the terminal and making sure you're in the right folder can get a little tricky. I don't have a go-to list of React projects. Other than the ones that we're going to be doing in class. I do think that Free Code Camp does have a React section. And I don't know if Odin project does. Let me look at both of those really quickly. I actually like Odin project a little bit more, but script. No, Odin project does not have React. And then my fallback is going to be both the old documentation and new documentation have like little tutorials in them. Yeah, so if you're in Free Code Camp, you happen to notice the front end development library certification happens to be the React logo. That is because this entire section, once you get past Bootstrap and jQuery, has all of React in it. So this can be a good one to use. The only thing I will warn you here is that this is the older syntax of React. And so they may be using the class-based React. Yeah, so you'll see this doesn't really look like our version of React. I'm now slightly taking this recommendation back. React about 4 years ago said, hey, instead of doing object-oriented or class-based React, they kind of mean the same thing, we are going to switch over to using functions instead. And the entire industry kind of got on board with that. And they were like, you're right, that's so much better. Functions are more JavaScript-y. And so this, while still supported by React, is definitely the older way of writing React components. And it may kind of confuse you based off of what we're doing in class versus the way Free Code Camp is teaching it. So you're still technically writing React here, you're just using a different syntax, so to speak, or different way of organizing your code. Now that I know that, I'm hesitant to recommend Free Code Camp. So instead, maybe check out the newer documentation. They do a tic-tac-toe app here. So you could check that one out. That's React Dev, Get Started, and under Quick Start, there's the tic-tac-toe. And then they also have like a Thinking in React, which is like thinking through the steps of breaking down things into components and all of that kind of stuff. So this is, sorry for thinking through it as I'm giving you my answer. These two are probably the ones that I would recommend the most because they're the most up to date.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, that was a really long answer for what should have been a simple question.
No, it's fine. I kind of figured the Free Code Camp one was older like version when you were going over like tonight's like lesson. So I was like, that's why I had to act like. So
you could have just said, "Shut up, Max. I looked at Free Code Camp already. It doesn't look right." Yeah, those two are good. And you know, while I'm here, I think it's reactjs.org. Oh no, see now that's redirecting me to the can I get into the React docs? Let me just look at their old stuff. Yeah, so they do tic-tac-toe on the old site as well. So I would say just stick to the new tutorials on the new React documentation website. Joe, what's up?
I just had a question about resources for learning more about like what's going on behind the hood for like hooks and stuff. You mentioned array destructuring. I'm looking at the chapter in the 3rd edition of Eloquent JavaScript about destructuring. There's not like there's not a whole lot in there though.
Yeah, you're definitely someone who goes to a level deeper than what I have understanding of. The way that I typically learn about that stuff is I see it in someone else's code and I go, oh, that's something that I should know about. Or I will Google like what's new in ES 2015. And they'll go through and there'll be like dot filter is a new function and you know, all that kind of stuff. And then I go to MDN and I read the first paragraph and I go, this is getting too technical. I look at the example, I figure out how it's working, and then I don't read the rest of the page. So I think you will probably like MDN if you just do a search for array destructuring. I would be very surprised if MDN didn't have a page on that.
I got one.
Destructuring assignment.
Iteration. Is that the one where it is?
What one?
That looks about right. I'm on destructuring assignment right now. Destructuring
That's it.
attacks a JavaScript expression that makes it possible to unpack values from arrays or properties you have this into this variable.
Yeah, and interestingly, there's one called React ES6 that has ES6 destructuring. I don't know why they made a completely separate page for that because destructuring in React happens to work the same exact way that destructuring in JavaScript works. So I'm
What are
not
we on right
sure.
now?
What's that?
We're on, are we on ES6?
No, we're on ES7 or 8, but ES6 was the one that
It's not
had all the major features that we're using
Right.
as developers.
Okay.
Well,
and
I
in,
shouldn't
in
say
3rd
that.
edition.
ES7. Yeah, ES7 is more about fine-tuning, focusing on making it easier to handle asynchronous tasks, do math operations, work with arrays. Oh, ES7 brings in async await and includes and support for trailing commas. So I guess I do day to day I use ES7 because I do use async await a lot. But that's more server side. And then ES8 is literally like more support for padding strings. So it's next to nothing. Oh, except ES8 brings in object.entries and values. The weird kind of thing with JavaScript is you can't pin it down to like a release date. So
It's not like a JDK.
Well, that's the difference, right? Is that it comes out on a specific date, right? And they're like, this is the official standard. We've all agreed this is what's going to happen. And then
in the browser.
Well, then it's up to the browsers to control when they're going to support it. So Node may come and say, we're supporting ES8 on a different date than Safari, Chrome, and Firefox are going to support them, right? So there's the published date of the standard, but the published date of the standard doesn't always correlate with when you can actually use them in the runtime engines.
Do the main browsers are they usually concurrent with those updates?
No. And to even further add fuel to the fire, they can support parts of the spec without supporting the whole spec.
That's terrible.
So they can come out and they can be like, object.entries is a great addition. Like everyone should be using that in their code. Like that makes sense to be able to make objects more iterable. And you're like, great, I'm going to use object.values as well. And they're like, screw you. No, we don't support that yet.
That's awful.
With that said, browsers have gotten a lot better. I got to run. I'm getting a phone call.
Yeah, you're good. Thank you.
See you guys.